Okay, everybody. This is SIG, Kubernetes SIG Architecture Production Readiness Sub-Project meeting for August 10th, 2022. And so, is my document visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I guess we have one new person here, Tarva. Did I say your name right? Welcome. If you'd like to introduce yourself, you can, or you don't have to.
Hello, is my voice audible?
There you go. I can hear you.
Yeah. So I have newly joined the SIG. This is my first meeting.
Okay.
I work in T-Systems, Germany. So my major project is in Google Kubernetes Engine. So we are creating a product which automates the creation of GKE. We have major clients like Volkswagen. So yeah, just wanted to see what's the SIG about and how I can help and contribute. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so this is a sub-project of SIG architecture. So this is why it's such a tiny meeting, because there's just a few people that we've managed to wrangle into doing this. But what we do is we look at, as new features come into Kubernetes, so every release, there's new features that come in. We review those features for what we call production readiness. So basically, the idea is you take the viewpoint of a cluster administrator who's administering thousands of clusters and ask, okay, if they roll this out across my fleet, am I going to hate them? And how can I hate them less? So how can I tell that that feature is out there? How can I tell it's working? How can I make sure that it's not exploding my clusters in some way? If it is exploding my clusters in some way, how can I roll it back? How do I monitor it? All of those pieces from the point of view of that cluster admin at a broad scale. And so as part of that, we introduced a questionnaire. So in Kubernetes, you said you're new. I don't know how many you are in all of the Kubernetes open source community, but we have a process every release, every SIG that wants to add some feature to Kubernetes goes through this Kubernetes enhancement proposal process. And there's a bunch of requirements that they have to sort of document the design and the tests and all this stuff. One of those sets of requirements is they have to document their production readiness, and depending on the maturity stage of that feature, alpha, beta, GA, there's a sort of successive ramping up of kind of the level of production readiness. At the alpha stage, we pretty much just say you should be able to turn it off, and when you turn it off, it should actually not break anything once it's off, and it should not break anything if you re-enable it after you've turned it off. And if you turn it off and on again, you can do that safely. So that's basically all we require for alpha. And then later we ramp up those requirements around metrics and things like that. So as a group, every release cycle, we review all of the CAPs and their answers to all of those. And as a group, we also establish what those questions are in that CAP and what those policies are. So that's, in a nutshell, what this little sub-project of SIG architecture does. And we'd love to have you involved. We have right now only 3 people to review all of those CAPs, which is somewhere in the order of 80 CAPs every cycle. So that leaves us with each more than 20 or almost 30, depending on the cycle. And so we're looking to recruit new members, so we'd love to have you involved. And if you're interested in joining that team, then as the next release cycle spins up, what you would do is sort of shadow, or you'd look at how David or me or Wojciech, and Wojciech is going to be out, so actually it's just going to be me and David this next cycle, how we do those reviews. And you would then start to do some yourself that we would we would look at and sort of, give feedback on. And eventually, when you reach you've done enough of them over a couple of releases, then you could join the team without that oversight. So that's kind of the process for making that happen. All right. So that said, if there's no comments on that, we go to our very short agenda. David, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss today other than what I put here on the agenda?
No, I was just going to remind you that I have not, or assure you, I have not forgotten that I'm going to go through the survey data. But as I told you before, it was likely going to be September, and that timeline is playing out just as expected. So
okay, good. All right, good. So we don't have a lot of people here, so we just make it happen as best we can. And I did mention I'm working on getting some other folks here involved, and of course, David, if you have some other folks at Red Hat, since I don't know if Elena, when she's coming back, anybody we get would be helpful. And I know you know that as well as I do.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so here's the issue that was raised on Slack, and unfortunately Mike's not here, so we'll have to just discuss it, and then he can watch the video, or we can discuss it with him later. But he sounds like he's would like more guidance from this group about what an acceptable answer is. And I don't think cube control is, I think that's a last resort answer. So I'm not going to read his comment, but basically he's saying, is there another way other than cube control to tell? And if you take that viewpoint I mentioned earlier of you have thousands of clusters, or in the case of RSREs, many more than that, it's not really reasonable to run kube control commands. I mean, yeah, to say, is the feature enabled? If you want to say, like, is this feature in use across my fleet? It's pretty hard if you have to run a kube control command against every single cluster. I mean, that said, we have to be sensitive to metrics, explosions, and things like that. I don't know if we can export a metric around what feature gates, or if we do export a metric around what feature gates are enabled in each component. Do you know, David, about that?
I don't know whether we do. I am okay with doing that because I believe it could be its own metric. And so it may have many labels with a bunch of values 0 or 1, but the way you would combine it with all the rest would be through PromQL. So the cardinality would not be, the size would not be. I am a little bit spoiled here because OpenShift pretty tightly controls what feature gates are on and off.
Yeah, so it's
but just in general, I can get behind the idea of exposing a metric.
So if we did that, I mean, it wouldn't be just, it would be in each component, right? It would be in, and that means in each instance of each component. So like, that means, you've got one per node for each kubelet, or more than one if you've got other things running on the node. But you have to think about that. I mean, that's not a lot. I don't know. It's not like a cross product or something. How would you use that in your queries? I guess you could then check which nodes have it, which feature.
Yeah, you'd be able to do things like, how many nodes do I have that have this enabled? Do I have any node that has this enabled? Do the nodes that have this enabled have a significant delta on the number of pending pods? You would be able to construct queries like
that. That would be really nice, actually. And this would make it sort of, everybody would, and the question to that answer would be easy. Answer to that question would be easy then.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. I think I would probably start by drawing the line there versus trying to expose a structured API, which we've rejected before. or trying to expose
When you
other.
say structured API, you're talking about component status, or you're talking about something else?
Yeah, well, it wasn't exactly component status. We faced the question of how can a client know which admission plugins are enabled? And the answer we chose is they can't.
Okay.
And I'm not ready to extend this to what admission plugins are enabled. But feature gates, I could see exposing that for people who have access to metrics versus people who have general cluster access.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that seems to me like, are there other ways for certain features that should catch the majority of features? Because almost everything has a feature gate. There are things that are built out of tree. I'm just trying to brainstorm, think about like, what do we miss if we do this? There are things that are out of tree that are enabled by installing them on the cluster. I don't know that we need to address those immediately.
I think the next question we're likely to face is for features that are both opt in for the feature and then choose how to configure the feature. Are
Yeah.
we going to do anything else? And
are you using the feature is a different question than is it enabled?
And I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I'm ready to say that one way or another, because that will explode, because that's essentially like all the config values for all the flags.
Yeah. Right. Like if you look at like the one that pops to mind, a recent one that I've reviewed a bunch of times is like the CPU policy pieces or things like that. Like we don't want to flag on all those individual policies, right?
Yeah. Or I guess more specifically, if the SIG node in that case decided they needed to, whether or not they do, how they do, level of granularity will be up to them and SIG instrumentation versus something like this for the feature gate. We would probably just build something generic that had the metric and then had all the different labels.
Right. Okay.
So then the question becomes, that would probably be a kept for 127, or do we want to try to do it for 126? I have limited bandwidth in 126.
I have. Let me talk with folks here, and see if anybody has an appetite for it. I don't have the bandwidth at all.
Okay, it's not a big lift, but
right.
I'm just looking realistically at what comes in. We got to get through all the keps. I have some implementation PRs for API machinery and auth that are owed reviews. At least one missed 125 by just a few days. So I want to make sure it lands at 126.
When would cap freeze roughly be for 126?
I'm not sure.
4 months from when it was for 125, right? So
yeah, it's possible that Mayank, just given the direction, would be willing to do it himself. We should ask him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, I think that's a good start, and certainly more discussion will happen on a cap. So, I will just put a note here. Both, I assume you're in agreement here. Okay, does that sound accurate?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay. So I don't have any other agenda. I'm happy to wrap it up 40 minutes early unless somebody's got something they want to talk about.
Nope, that works for me.
Okay, I'll follow up with Mike, and then I'll follow up with folks here, whether somebody wants to pick it up as something to do. I guess probably out of SIG instrumentation or something. I don't know, or SIG architecture. I don't know where it's going to come from. Who the primary on the KEP will be.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Thanks, Atharva. Good to meet you, and welcome to the project.
Thanks guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.